Okay, welcome back. If the clerk's office is ready, I'll call this meeting of the Urbana City Council to order for Monday, June 28th, 2021.
Yes. So, do I call the roll?
Yes, please.
Okay. Miss Wu,
Yes, here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Miss Hersey,
Here. Sorry.
Miss Colasetti. Here. Miss Bishop,
Here.
Miss Wilkin.
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next item is approval of minutes from the previous meeting. We have three sets of meeting minutes on the agenda. One is for the public hearing held on June 7th, 2021. The second is for the special city council meeting held on June 7th, 2021. And then the third is for the city council meeting held on June 14th, 2021. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move approval of those three meeting minutes. Note our agenda actually has things a little mixed up, so.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Just a little. But again, it's the June 7th, 2021 City Council hearing, the June 7th, 2021 special City Council meeting, and then the June 14th City Council meeting. Is
I'll
there a second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. Are there any corrections? I will say that anytime there's a reference to the short-term workforce training program or SWIFT program, the acronym is actually SWFT. Even though we say SWIFT when we refer to it, it's SWFT. So we'll try to correct that throughout the minutes. Okay, is there a, look, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. And I'd like to thank the clerk's office for getting these minutes out in the timely manner that they do. Any additions to the agenda? We don't have any. Next up are public input and presentations. We'll begin with public input. There are no presentations scheduled for tonight. First to speak, Evelyn Underwood, Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes. I didn't have anything too much to say on this evening, but I'm glad that somebody saw my hand. Thank you very much, and I'll be listening.
Thank you.
I'll continue listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Tracy Chong.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Tracy Chong. Mayor Marlin, last week, we all got a glimpse of the type of actions you will resort to when people dare to challenge your actions and actually have the power to stop your questionable actions. I've always wondered what will happen when you get a city council that are not puppets who are too spineless to question or call out your lies and attempts to control decisions that are not yours alone to make. First, we saw you disrespect and try to sidestep the democratic process by depriving council members and their constituents of their rights to approve appointments and that were rightly questionable. When council members voiced their opinions and one council member put forth a motion that would essentially prevent you from doing that, you threw a childish tantrum and berated them and questioned their morals and called them unconscionable. What you did is, in your own words, unconscionable. Mayor Marlin, one more thing. The constant reminders to the newly seated council that they are new on the job that they only have X number of months experience, particularly when they ask critical questions or make decisions you don't like, is just disrespectful. It is disrespectful to them and to the public. The newly voted council members are fully capable of understanding the issues brought forward to them and have earned the respect of the public who voted for them. To constantly remind them that they are new and implying that they do not fully grasp the issues at hand when you disagree with their decisions, it's also, in your words, unconscionable. Just stop it. Last week's meeting was also interesting. We got to see what happens when residents like me call out police misconduct as we see it. We got to see a representation of what some police officers are willing to do when their misconduct is called out and residents call for transparency, accountability, and measures that will result in safer policing. Dean Hazen, Chief of Public Safety at Richland Community College, former UPD police officer and former City Council member, misrepresented a survey littered with fake names to City Council. At the same time, Hazen starts gaslighting, accusing me of having a perverted opinion for calling out dangerous misconduct, like an officer running around brandishing both a firearm and a taser gun in the midst of civilians, including a baby. According to Hazen, those of us, many of us, who feel that the language screaming at a civilian to act like a lady are overly sensitive. We have seen this kind of attitude with police command staff, including Urbana police leadership. The extreme reluctance to investigate misconduct, the inability to find misconduct, even though it's documented, to spin the narrative to justify misconduct, lying on police reports to justify use of force, and to gaslight and retaliate against the public who dare to point out misconduct. That's why the public is questioning their reappointments. With attitudes like this, it is no wonder police misconduct continues like a virus permeating police departments. My hope is that there are ethical police officers in our department. Officers will agree that screaming, "Act like a lady," is just not acceptable. I hope there are police officers who agree that Officer Ruff's haphazardly swinging, ready-to-fire weapon while in the midst of other officers and civilians, and the two-handed weapon-wielding officer running around, is in fact dangerous, and not dangerous not only to the public, but to other officers working alongside him. Maybe you guys can speak out and show that Dean Hazen and the other corrupt officers do not represent the police force. And since I have some time, I have a question. Is there a reason why on the agenda, all meetings start at 6? In the past, for example, you had township meetings starting at 6:30 and then city council starting at 7. So we always had a safe time to be there for city council meeting. Now we have no idea if township meeting ends early, then we miss council. Like we just have to sit there throughout the entire thing. So I was wondering what's the reason for this. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Alan Max Axelrod.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Alrighty, I'll start when the clock's up, please. Thank you so much. So my name is Alan Max Axelrod. I am speaking today in my capacity as the Champaign-Urbana DSA, Democratic Socialists of America co-chair. I'm again speaking to you about the SWIFT program. Thank you, Mayor Marlin, for noting the correction in the meeting minutes. One of the things that we had been talking to you about was funding the SWIFT program outright without any additional explanation. And today, what I'd like to outline to you is a structure by which the City of Urbana can collaborate with the willing members of the Champaign City Council to provide funding for the SWIFT program alongside wraparound services. See, there is a, let's call it a justified barrier before the Champaign City Council to fund the SWIFT program outright. However, with positive indication from the City of Urbana that the risks that the City of Champaign is willing to take would be met in kind for a complementary set of programs, such as the SWIFT program, would go a very long way towards changing the landscape of our community as it relates to violence. This isn't not just talking about getting people good jobs, it's giving them good alternatives. When we talk about crime and why people engage in it, part of it is, pardon me, my cat is batting at my binder as I'm speaking. Part of it is the fact that people have basically been entrapped to maintain what quality of life they have, and that the SWIFT program, in a very swift manner, provides a very appealing alternative. And both the Democratic Socialists of America and the Party for Socialism and Liberation are willing to walk the streets and will be starting to walk the streets this week to help make sure that this program reaches those folks. I've canvassed in the North End and seen unscrupulous activity. I know where they are. And so one of the things that I want to convey to the city of Urbana is that we are not asking you to just write a check. We are asking you to do as you have done before and prioritize services that another unit of government would also like to see rendered, and to help facilitate those services being rendered. The other thing that I want to pivot to on an individual level, in the capacity of campaign lead of No Ameren Shutoffs, a $0 all-volunteer coalition of 49 member organizations and counting, which has expanded into the state of Iowa, is that one of the things that we are encouraged about is the low levels of coronavirus cases. However, there are logistical things that honestly don't cost the city any money and will also bring in a small amount of revenue that are worthy of the city's consideration. One of which is the Utility Disconnection Avoidance Program and who it did not cover. The Utility Disconnection Avoidance Program was enacted on April 22nd, a little over a week since utility shutoffs resumed in 2021. Anyone who was shut off specifically between the time of April 14th, when Ameren, Illinois began utility shutoffs in 2021 in earnest without any restriction, and April 22nd, when the Utility Disconnection Avoidance Program provided funds with automatically to the most vulnerable at-risk populations, which definitely had an impact on the COVID caseload. I've been through this before with other governments, is that they're ineligible. And the way that you can make them eligible is by exploring the Emergency Services and Disaster Agency Act to restore power so that they are, again, eligible. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Wayne Williams.
Hi, this is Wayne Williams. I'm Cunningham Township Assessor. I went back and forth on whether I should do this during this time or during town board time. I chose to do it during this time. I would like to call out a couple of city employees, one of which is on your appointed list today. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge a few employees: Sanford Hess, Kim Hubbard, Vivian Patrode, and Nick Hansen. These employees helped immensely in my 2021 assessor work, and I would like to publicly thank them. They all put up with many urgent emails, both late and early, for me, and I could not have done my job without their hard work. I would like to further thank all of the building inspectors whose names I don't know, but whose work I dearly depend on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Julie Watkins.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can I see the clock? Thank you.
there you go.
Okay. I want to thank you to everyone making public input and for members of council who listen and respond to public input. My first input is about timing. Whether or not the mayor has spoken about altering the process for reappointments, it's clearly the case that other council members expected to vote this council meeting on all the 19 appointments that were postponed last council meeting. Therefore, since the change in procedure hasn't been done in time, the mayor should today go with what was agreed, and she should make a goal to try and achieve the change she approaches for the next year's cycle. And I found it rather odd to complain and lecture others about it's the wrong time when it was the mayor who ran out of time to convince the rest of the council to change what had been done last year and years before, rather than trying to say that she can withdraw and not have all 19 reappointments. My second comment, I want to reply to a public input last week that lectured people who have objected to police leadership reappointments just because of an officer saying, act like a lady. The words weren't the sole issue. The real issue was how quickly the officer chose force rather than de-escalation. The words, which were sexist, call into question why he made that choice. The rapidity and the words leave the impression that he did not seriously consider de-escalation. That action might be an outlier, but the actions since regarding people's objections are typical of not listening. I've said before on the issue of safety that places with the most safety have the most services, not the most police. It's a matter of listening. Thank you for considering these issues. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Arthur Paganini.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait for the timer. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Arthur. I'm representing the Party for Socialism and Liberation in Champaign-Urbana. So really what I wanted to ask City Council is to what Alan Axelrod said earlier about SWIFT. I think that SWIFT is the best opportunity that this community has really for its future in terms of preventing gun violence. I was at the Champaign City Council meeting a few weeks ago where they had a lot of Back the Blue people. They had a lot of people that were not Back the Blue people, but the common thread in that entire meeting was gun violence. And I was at the capital improvement plan meeting that you guys had a few weeks ago, and you were talking about the future of Urbana, and you were talking about how the city isn't spending enough on its capital projects. It needs to be spending $25 million, but you've been spending $14 million. Well, I would want you guys to extend that same line of thought to education, right? If you think about investing in people, that's what education really is, fundamentally. So if you think about making a $1 million investment now in training people, imagine the kind of the kind of returns that you're going to get later on down the road. This isn't new. I don't think this is a novel way of looking at things. But I think that it makes sense. I think that we should be looking to the future to prevent gun violence in the future, not just, Band-Aid solutions right now. Alan said everything that I really wanted to say better than I could say it. But I just want to reiterate that the SWIFT program is a tremendous opportunity for both Urbana and Champaign and the entire community to have a brighter future. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is our Eddie Pratt Jr. Go ahead, Eddie Pratt Jr.
Can you hear me clear? Sorry, I was wrestling with my phone.
Yes.
Okay. Hope you're all well tonight. My name is Eddie Pratt Jr. I am a resident of Urbana. I am a member of the Champaign-Urbana Democratic Socialists of America. I am also the creator of the CU Human Rights Coalition Discourse Place and page for all things concerning human rights, community organizations, mobilizing, equity, and justice. So obviously, if you listen to Alan's comment. I mean, I don't think there's really much else to really be said, but I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story in these little bit of 3 minutes that I have, and let you go into the night with it. So once upon a time in this very land, at one of the larger employers in the city, I trained a young man to do a job. This man, he was younger than me. He was barely 21. Bright, great work ethic, positive, great teammate, made everybody better, made everybody's day better. One day coming in, I heard that he wasn't there. I saw people's faces kind of turned a certain way. I couldn't figure out what was going on. My manager was stirring in a way that's unusual than the normal day-to-day. I walked up to him and asked him what was going on. He told me that this young man was out just minding his own business and got caught in crossfire in Danville a few years ago. Another teammate was with him. She didn't get hit, but of course, she was traumatized. She quit 3 days later. There was an emptiness that was felt in that place for a very long time. His name, I still carry on with me. I say it to myself sometimes when I'm walking, talking to people or engaging with people, because I don't want to forget him. I think about how unfair it was that somebody that didn't get a chance to really live his life got his taken away by just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I'll tell you this, that place that he was at was probably a place with very low equitable contributions in our community. If we are going to turn the tide, we must invest in people. We must invest in alternatives. We must invest in a model that sees gun violence being dropped by at least half in the places it's been implemented, a one-stop shop of sorts. We need all of these things. We need trauma-informed education for Black and brown children. We need all of these things, and we need your help. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Brian Dunn.
Hello, my name is Brian Dunn from Champaign, and I would also like to speak in favor of the SWIFT program. I'm sure nobody's against the SWIFT program, but I think that the timing, coming out of this pandemic and with so many people unemployed, I don't think the timing could be better. And I think that both Urbana and Champaign need to kind of jump on this opportunity to, fund such a great job training program. Not just training in any jobs, but in jobs that are going to make people at least $50,000. I just think that the time is now. This isn't something that we should be thinking about later down the road. We need to, find a way to support this program, to expand this program, broaden this program now. And so it's just great to hear so many people chiming in and talking about what a great program that would be. And then also I would like to just express my concern about, returning to in-person meetings. And I hope that the Urbana City Council can find a way to incorporate a hybrid model that allows for both Zoom comments and in-person comments because, Champaign has not done that. And it's definitely hindered who can comment, especially with all the flooding that's been out in Garden Hills. Those community members definitely want to be at city council, but, public transportation isn't even able to get them to city council and back. And a lot of people, they can't wade through flooded neighborhoods to get to city council meetings. So the last couple of weeks, there's only been a couple people from Garden Hills, but they let us know that, the meetings are not accessible. And city council should be wanting to cast the widest net possible to, be the best reflection of the city as possible. And I think that's, just making sure that we have both Zoom and in person for people, who can't handle Zoom, either don't have the equipment or don't have the technological capabilities. I think that, we shouldn't be taking any steps back after the pandemic. We should be making everything as accessible as possible, taking what we've learned and, strengthening it as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ben Theobald.
Coming through now.
Yes, you are.
All right. Hi, my name is Ben Theobald. I am a resident of Urbana. I'm a member of Champaign-Urbana DSA, and I have a public affairs show on WFT radio every Mondays at 6. I just wanted to come and speak a few things. I want to reiterate my support for the SWIFT program. That I know a lot of the people that Eddie Pratt Jr., who's been very vocal about it. I think and I don't know what more I could say about it. We need to be investing in our community and giving people opportunities to make a living here. And if we want people to stay here in our towns in Champaign-Urbana, then give them at least, I think it was 50,000. So that I think this would be a really good start and help invest in our communities. I also just want to let you all know that today the Illinois rental payment program for emergency rental assistance, they opened their I guess we would say office hours today. They were closed for a period of time, but today they opened their tenant-led application period for it's the Illinois rental payment program. Tenants will have until Sunday, the end of Sunday, July 18th. So right up until 11:59 p.m. To complete their portion of the application. I just want to get this information out there because as we all know, we're still in the pandemic. And in fact, J.B. Pritzker, our governor, said that the Delta variant, he expects that the Delta variant, which is the more spreadable variant of COVID-19, he expects that will be the dominant variant of here in the state of Illinois by the fall. So that's unfortunately another thing we have to worry about, as well as, keeping people in their homes, making sure people aren't evicted. I believe there is a moratorium on evictions here in Illinois until August, I believe. So I think we need to do everything we can to make sure people are able to stay in their homes and get that information about assistance that is available. They can also, the website for anyone listening is the Illinois Housing Development Authority. That's IHDA.org. And if they go to I believe it rental housing and then rental payment program, they can find all that information. I'm sure, obviously there's more information about how they qualify and all that information, but I just wanted to let you know that they did open their office hours today, and they're open until Sunday, July 18th. and that's the Illinois Housing Development Authority and their Illinois Rental Payment Program. Phone number is 866-454-3571. Thank you very much. I'm ending my, and I reside the rest of my time.
Thank you. Next up is C.
Can you hear me?
There's quite an echo there.
Okay, how about now? Are we okay?
That's better, Christopher. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry, my name is only C. This is Christopher Hansen. Hello, City Council, how you doing? The last couple of weeks have been interesting. I was sorry to see that some of the City Council members have become victims of Mary Shank's work in the News Gazette. I know how that goes. She likes to twist things to her pleasure, doesn't she? And she sure does like to support police. At some point, not today, but sometime I'd like to talk to the City Council and the city about the exchange of favors that happens between our police department and Mary Shank and the News Gazette, because it's really, really, really distorting how the public understands our city when we have, you know, police officers and the mayor and her administrative department kind of trading favors with someone, so they write favorable articles for her politically, and then Mary Shank gets access to police information without having to submit FOIA requests. It's really kind of gross, and we need to kind of talk about how that should work. But what I really wanted to talk about was Dean Hazen's letter that he sent to the City Council, the letter which somehow manages to conclude that there are only 2 people in the entire county who are interested in police reform. I think we could tell the letter is rather dishonest. The arguments that were made in regards to his petition signatures are rather dishonest as well. And it was full of fake names and double signatures. And, I'm going to read some of the signatories that Dean Hazen sent to the City Council. So these are people who signed Dean Hazen's petition. So the first one is fire all the police, fire Chief Seraphin, fire Coker, fire Norton, fire Smizer, fire Searles, another fire Searles. These are people who signed his petition. And Madam Mayor, you're going to have to excuse some language here because I'm just reading directly from what Dean Hazen sent to the council. This is a public record. One of the signatories was fuck the police. Another signatory was, quote, fuck you from the town of Fuckerson. This is what Dean Hazen sent to the city. Another person who signed his letter was, quote, Dick Enormous. Julia Reitz signed the letter twice, along with many other people all over the country, a large portion of whom are the wives and family members of police officers who don't reside in Urbana. The petition contains dozens of fake names, and it's almost hard to want to spend the time filtering them all out. What Dean Hazen has done here is exactly the caliber of work that we've come to expect from the Urbana Police Department leadership, and all they do is lie, deceive, and intimidate until they get their way. I can only imagine that whoever thought Hazen would make a suitable police chief must have the same backwards moral compass that our own mayor seems to have when it comes to appointees, because he uses the same tactics of lies, deception, and intimidation to get his way. And Mr. Hazen, if you're listening, I would just ask that as a public official, you compose yourself honestly. And if you have a problem with me, act like a man and call me or meet with me so we can discuss the issues. If any of you sitting on the council are not aware of these tactics being frequently employed by Marlin's appointees, then you just haven't been paying attention. Please ask Carol Mitten and Chief Seraphin about the years of police complaints that they destroyed last year. The CPRB was asking for these complaints, and she and the police department didn't want them to have those documents. So apparently they went back and destroyed years of public records so the CPRB and the public wouldn't be able to see them. Ask Carol Mitten and Chief Seraphin about all the tactics they've employed to deny police complaints. How does that improve public trust? Ask Chief Seraphin how many use of force reviews his team has performed in the past 3 years. Our police policies say that they need to review every use of force, and our mayor has been claiming that this is what's happening. But my research shows that in 3 years, they performed 1 use of force review, and that was the Alea Lewis arrest. And by the way, we still don't have all the video from that arrest because the police department refuses to give it to us. So we're going to have this same old boys club. Nothing has changed. Nothing has improved. And my understanding is this council is going to keep on going with this same old boys club and appoint the same people who so fiercely resist change.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Next up is Bianca Nihan.
Yes, hello.
Yes,
Can you hear
go
me?
ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, hi. I'm a resident in Urbana. My name is Bianca. I'm also the co-chair of the CUDSA. I wanted to voice my support for the SWIFT program and the additional funding for that program in particular. I believe that with the funds that necessary, people that are in need of the forms have the ability to improve their lives in a better way if they had access to higher paying jobs that can support them, not only them and their family. But I just think that just speaks to like a larger issue in regards to despair and hopelessness when it comes to feeling like you don't have anything to like look forward to. So I really want the Champaign and Urbana City Council to understand that there are people that feel hopeless, and little things just like having the ability to feed their families with a decent job and support them could be one of the things that could be life-changing for them. So it may seem like a small thing, a yes or no for a checkbox for you guys, but it's literally life and death for some people. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. You guys are making these type of decisions when it comes to having programs that support your residents, make sure that they do have the ability to have alternatives, not just from violence or from domestic violence or community violence, but from hopelessness and despair in general. Especially coming out of the year that we've had, we have to keep that in mind, that there are a lot of things that contribute to those types of things. And if we have the ability to at least alleviate some of that, then it's our responsibility and our duty to make sure that we can. That's all.
Thank you. And next person is Sarah Nixon.
Hello, City Council. As of 2 weeks ago, Champaign-Urbana began hearing an outcry from Back the Blue for better city leadership and better police leadership. I joined that outcry as a survivor of domestic violence and a survivor of police wrongdoing, including failure to follow basic domestic violence protocol. I know firsthand that our police leadership lacks integrity, honesty, and honor. If Back the Blue stands for these qualities in police leadership, then I'm with you. I back you, Back the Blue. Having listened attentively in real time to the hours of public input given by Back the Blue 2 weeks ago at Champaign City Council meeting, I do trust that the majority is pro-solution, pro-transparency, pro-accountability, and pro-responsible and responsive leadership. And everyone calling for accountable and professional police leadership needs to unite and call on our city leadership to change course and go in the right direction. Because good officers, upright officers who only wish to serve and protect and work within a departmental culture that holds itself to the highest ethical and service standards are also being betrayed egregiously. So speaking for myself, I'm glad that you are now speaking up. Public discourse does not feel right when it is one-sided. Democracy only works when all parts come together. And if you stand for ethics, for integrity, for courage and honor, and I believe you do, then we do stand all together. But I have to ask, what is happening with policing? Why is the profession failing to screen out, weed out, and police its own? Law enforcement can do so much better and must do better. Everyone's safety depends on it. And that takes me to the whistleblowers, to the brave whistleblowers at the Urbana Fire Department and Police Department. Know your protections and rights. Any retaliation, whether in or out of the workplace, and any threatened retaliation for exposing workplace misconduct constitutes a Class A misdemeanor under the Illinois Whistleblowing Act. 740 Illinois Compiled Statutes, Section 174/20.1. Look it up. Your workplace or union handbook may not contain this info. Defines retaliation by an employer because of the employee disclosing or attempting to disclose public corruption or wrongdoing. And know that you are entitled to remedies under the law. So I want to encourage the whistleblowers. I applaud their bravery. While putting on your uniforms and gear to go out and fight fires and crime is a mark of your courage, but you are fully supported in doing those things and have been trained. but nobody trains whistleblowers, and in toxic institutions, few support them. Most of you who serve in the UPD and fire department are brave men and women, but it takes next level courage to expose wrongdoing among the senior ranks. So I support you, and all good people do as well. And those who do not support and protect the whistleblowers are the problem. A tiny yet too powerful group of executive bureaucrats and management appointees who carry on in the shadows. I have said it before and I'm saying it again. Urbana needs to be scrutinizing the union bureaucrats and the Fraternal Order of Police and the Firefighters Union, and the appointed and reappointed puppets on strings who dance to their tunes. Last but far from least, it is shameful to hear tonight people minimizing Corey Coker's misconduct and limiting it to his verbal insult of act like a lady. You know that he participated in the violent assault and escalation of an innocent Urbana resident, and while instead he was obligated under Urbana Police Department policy to de-escalate and to respond to the victim following domestic violence protocol, which was clearly called for. I recognize that I'm out of time, so I will wrap up here, but there is much more to be discussed with regard to the appointment unconscionable.
Thank you very much. Thank you
James
very
Corey.
much, Sarah Nixon. Next up is Teresa Hoffman.
Hello, I just wanted to let you know I'm watching the city council meeting from home, and I appreciate everyone with their public input. I do appreciate the council members that are listening to everyone's public input with full attention on the screen, and I hope that they continue to do so and focus on what's important, on what is going on right at the moment. I appreciate your time and have a good evening.
Thank you. Next up is Dean Hazen. Go ahead, Dean. You're muted if you're, there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't get to hear me, did you?
No, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dean Hazen, and I just wanted to respond to Chris Hansen's comments about that petition. If that petition had profanity on it, like he described, I truly apologize to you and to the public. Obviously, certain somebodies went into my petition and put in some profanity. I filtered those out and did the count on it. And that's what I sent you on an email, was what I believe to be an accurate count based on filtering out those profanities. But I don't think I hit the save button on my computer. So obviously you got the copy with the profanities. So I do apologize to everybody that anybody had to read that or hear that. As far as Chris's invite to meet with him, I'm not going to do that. I kind of quit doing that around the 6th or 7th grade. But I do hope that Chris gets some help. I feel sorry for him. I can tell by listening to a couple of these meetings that he's really got a mental problem, and I, in all sincerity, feel sorry for him. Again, thank you for receiving the petition. I believe that 95% of those names are valid, and that's being very, very liberal to say that. There were a few that were hacked into there. So thank you all very much and have a good night.
Thank you. And that looks like everyone has had a chance to speak. You know, Dr. Underwood's hand is still up, but I know she said she was going to be listening. All right, we'll move on to council input and communications. Do we have any comments from council? And remember, you have 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes. James.
Yeah, I do again thank the public who have called in tonight and participated. I also want to thank the numerous people who have emailed us with their input. the more we hear from the residents of Urbana and our neighbors, the more information we have to make our decisions is a very good thing. I do want to give a shout out to our fire department. I had unfortunately an opportunity to get their services. Our church on Philo Road had a fire alarm over the weekend. Fortunately, no fire. But I do want to say how impressed I was with the response time. The station in downtown had to come because the station right across the street was serving a medical call. But they came, they were very professional, very helpful, and that's been my experience every time I've had to work with our fire department. So thanks for the work you guys do.
Any other council members wish to make comments? Chandra.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. As Jane said, I want to thank everyone who chose to participate in the process by sending emails with your input. Thank you to everyone except the racist dude who blamed Black people for the gun violence. I found that email to be wholly offensive, as there are Black men, young and old, who are in my family, who are my friends, and who I represent in Ward 5. I point this particular email out because this individual was a former law enforcement officer as few as 8 years ago. And that mentality is why I take these appointments seriously. If we hope to change the culture and the perception of police, then we have to ensure that those running the department don't have values and biases similar to the individual who sent me that email. So I have nothing against current command staff, and I'm here to ensure that relations between community and police improve, while also working to keep residents safe and break trauma cycles in our community. So like I said, this isn't personal. I'm merely making sure I'm able to speak for all of the residents I represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Grace.
Thank you. Want to also thank the public for your input in meetings and emails, and agree with some of them that have some, what I see as harmful views that have been within some of our city systems. I agree that we need more funding and resources towards investing in the community, and I hope that we can have open, productive, and strategic conversations about spending ARP money, the equals money in the next budget, and future city spending. I have concerns about appointments and reappointment processes in the city. I have confidence that these positions will be approved, and I still have concerns about the entire process and a few individuals. I'm looking forward to working on the city code to have a more clearly laid out process for appointments and reappointments. And I want to see that our city staff is supported, that they have things like constructive annual performance reviews, job satisfaction surveys, employee feedback, professional development, maybe professional mentorship programs. And that includes all cities or all employees under Urbana government and services. There have been some requests from the public for more information and input from various groups, including the public, employees, and officers themselves. I think we need to work together to address community safety and the best interest of the public, to work towards the shared principles of the city and the police department, which includes rejecting discrimination, building and rebuilding trust, developing strong relationships with communities of color, supporting diversity, and using de-escalation, among others. My goal is to serve and protect the public and provide my opinion, questions, and vote to aid the city in serving the public. I hope that on another note too, that when we return to council chambers, that we will continue a hybrid model as suggested. From what I've looked into on the Open Meetings Act, it looks like it very much allows and supports whatever is most accessible to the public. And I think that with barriers of transportation, COVID, and just all sorts of things, I would like to see a hybrid model. And it looks like that's what's supported, being most accessible to the public. Thanks.
Christopher, and then Jaya.
Yeah, I want to just second what Councilmember Wilkins said. I want to thank the public for their input tonight. If I'm not on screen, it's because I'm taking notes, so I am listening to your comments. I want to thank everyone that's emailed me about the appointment process and the police command staff and the fire command staff. I appreciate the input and I appreciate the dialogue. And I hope that can continue. Going forward, we do need to address the appointment process. We plan to rewrite the code entirely to specify exactly how the appointment process will go in the future. And so if it's been a little rocky about the appointments this year, know that we're going to try to fix it so this won't happen next year or in years to come. Thank you.
Jay.
Well, at risk of sounding like a broken record, I'd also like to thank all the ways that we got input from people, whether it was logging on to meetings or sending emails. It really is important to hear those different perspectives. I also want to echo the challenges that we've seen with this process and give a note of thanks to the staff for helping us navigate it as best that we could. I know some of us had questions, and I've seen the staff be open and responsive to providing that information. I can say for myself that making an informed decision is really important, and that is one of the challenges with the process as it currently stands. So having that time to have discussions, make sure we had the information we needed was, I think, an incredible service. And I also want to give recognition to, on top of the fact that there's been this challenge, we also had an additional budget amendment, which should further these discussions as we move into an evaluation of public safety needs with that focus on racial equity as well. So echoing what other members have said, we recognize that this process is not working. We will work to address it, and please do continue to engage. We want to make sure that the community is part of these discussions.
Thank you. Charisse, and then Mary Alice.
Yeah, but I basically just kind of want to piggyback on what Chandra was saying regarding the input that was sent to me, with the exception of also the one letter that I received that was that pretty much proved what I have said before and actually have said to the law enforcement leadership, is that we are not criminals first and Americans second. Everyone has that kind of issue. Any if you are American, though, and you belong to a particular cultural group, nobody's perfect. And when I see that person, I want to see him walk on water. But I did appreciate, and I do much appreciate all the emails, even if I do not respond to you. Know that I am reading your emails and I do appreciate your input. Sometimes it's just it's overwhelming, but I appreciate any input, and I work every day so that I can make an informed decision by talking to the people that I'm actually reappointing or being considered to reappoint, and not just them, but the people that work under them. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Mary Alice.
Yeah, I'll make my comments brief. A lot of people have already talked about some things that were top of mind for myself. One thing what Sarah Nixon said, I thought was really the direction that I feel that the City Council wants to go. And I want to thank Chandra and Jaya for bringing the discussion topic up of how are we going to move this conversation forward. And I think we have a direction. And I really think that we can move this needle this upcoming year. So that's it.
Okay. All right. That concludes council member comments. We'll move on to unfinished business. The first item there are the mayoral staff reappointments for fiscal year 22, which are effective July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. As a way of introduction, I'm providing the fiscal year 22 annual staff reappointments for approval. All of these individuals previously have gone through the appointment and city council approval process when they were first hired. Our city code specifies annual reappointments for some positions, and others have been added to the appointment list over the years, but they're not specified in city code. But just so that the public is clear on what we're doing here tonight, the people on the reappointment list are not applying for jobs, or they're not being hired for these jobs. They're currently doing these jobs. So over the past week, city staff and I have had very productive conversations with any council members, all the council members who sought more information about the reappointees and the overall process. And I think we both learned from that process where things were confusing and where things needed to be improved. And I've known it for years. We need to improve this process. So I want to thank council members for very valuable feedback, for suggestions, for improving the staff reappointment process. And we're going to be taking those into account and propose long overdue revisions. The people who are up for reappointment tonight include senior leadership, such as the city administrator. And I'm just going to read out the names actually right now. So for the executive department, it's Carol Mitten for city administrator, Carla Boyd, human rights and equity officer, Sanford Hess, information technology manager, Andrea Rudy, senior advisor for integrated strategy development. Andrea is on a limited term appointment for work on the comprehensive plan. In the Community Development Services Department, Lori Pearson, Community Development Services Director. Human Resource and Finance Department, Elizabeth Hannon, who's the Human Resource and Finance Director and also the Chief Financial Officer, and Shannon Clark, Deputy Finance Director. In the Fire Department, Charles Loss, Fire Chief, Damon Dade, Deputy Fire Chief, Kyle Hench, Clint Whitert, and Mike Wallace, all fire division chiefs. In the police department, Bryant Seraphin for police chief, Richard Searles for deputy police chief, Jason Norton, police lieutenant, Dave Smizer, Matt Bain, and Corey Coker, also police lieutenants. As we noted in the memo, that several positions are vacant, but they are being filled through contractual services, and that would be for the Public Works Director, City Engineer, and City Attorney. And the, as also noted in the memo, Grants Manager Sheila Dodd will be moved to civil service. So I want to thank each and every one of the reappointees, and in fact, all the city employees for their extraordinary efforts over the past 18 months of the pandemic. Every task in the city was harder during COVID, and I'm sure you all experienced that same in your workplace as well. But these employees did their jobs above and beyond to maintain our city's core programs and services. They came to work, they stayed late, they worked weekends when needed. And what was especially amazing about this leadership team is that they were so creative, so flexible, and they responded to constantly changing rules and guidelines. And sometimes it would be several times a day. So if you can imagine, you're trying to maintain stability and functioning of government, and you all operated under the same, some of these same conditions, and things changed and shifted underfoot. And it's just remarkable that together, this team, and it was this team that led the city through the pandemic and enabled us to be as successful as we were in not only maintaining our programs and services, but accomplishing a number of major projects and improvements in the city. And this was done despite the fact and in spite and along with the fact that our employees, like everybody else in the community, dealt with illness, they dealt with death, they had childcare challenges, they were remote schooling, children at home, and they all experienced the same uncertainty and fear that the community did. And a few employees also dealt with unprecedented and unrelenting level of verbal attacks, public bullying in some meetings, in city council meetings, but also board and commission meetings. And that went for some board and commission members as well. But through it all, they did their jobs. I think City of Urbana employees are some of the best I have ever worked with, and it's an honor to work beside them. So I am honored to bring this list for your consideration. And before I ask for a motion, Carol Mitten, City Administrator, just had a few comments to make as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that we appreciate the time the council has committed in the few short weeks since you were sworn in to try and understand the city government and the role of the leadership team. For your benefit and the benefit of our residents, I want to share a little bit more perspective on the importance of continuity in the leadership ranks. I want to begin by saying that it's impossible for people who don't work inside the government to really appreciate what goes on internally. What I will share with you is that under Mayor Marlin's direction, we have transformed the leadership ranks in this city. And I do mean transformed, since all but a few of the folks that are on the appointment list were first appointed to their jobs by Mayor Marlin. Formerly, there was no shared sense of purpose, and department heads were operating in a siloed fashion. Some department heads were figureheads who really didn't contribute to day-to-day operations. That has changed. You've heard me say before that we run a very lean organization. We're only able to do that because everyone rolls up their sleeves and digs in at all levels. And we have a common sense of purpose and spend an enormous amount of time collaborating. The culture is not one of protecting one's turf or avoiding blame, but rather mutual support, hard work, and good humor. Every organization is organic. It changes, it regenerates. When even one person leaves, we have to recalibrate the needs of the organization to rebalance the skill sets that remain with the skills we need to recruit. And we do need to be able to recruit. In any given year, we have to recruit approximately 24 new employees. We currently have 17 open positions that we're recruiting for. It's no secret that we don't pay the highest salaries in the area. We are very competitive, however, when it comes to workplace culture. Our leadership team has been deliberate about fostering a culture where people want to come to work. Does that mean everyone is blissfully happy? No. But the majority of our employees feel respected, challenged, and supported. Anything that undermines our employees' ability to say that Urbana is a good place to work damages our ability to keep the organization strong. So the actions that you take, both tonight and in the future, become part of the narrative about whether our employees feel respected and supported. So please consider your role in keeping Urbana city government an employer of choice as you discuss and vote on the mayor's slate of appointments. And I just want to echo what the mayor said. It's an honor to serve with all of these people. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to apologize. I left off the Public Works reappointee on the list. It's Vince Gustafson. This was on page 2 of your agenda. So Deputy Public Works Director for Operations. Is there a motion for these reappointments? Mary Alice?
I'll move approval of the fiscal year 2022 appointments, and I believe there's 19 on this list. Is that correct?
I believe it's 18.
18.
I'll second.
Oh, you're 19. I'm sorry, it's 19.
And that doesn't affect my second.
Okay. Discussion. Is that Chris?
Yeah. There must be some reason why appointments are given to city council for approval. And without knowing for sure, I'm speculating it's because the city of Urbana has chosen to allow its representatives to approve or disapprove of these appointments because it's the public's business and it will be the public who will be affected by these appointments. I think in the future that this needs to be a much more public process, that these appointees, however we describe it, biographies, resumes, goals for the upcoming year, whatever it is that the candidates, what the public should know about the candidates needs to be presented to the public in advance of these votes. No longer can we just have a list of names who we don't know, especially with a new council. And yes, we want to make the workforce, the workplace in the city of Urbana attractive. At the same time, we want to hold all, these are policy-making appointments. These are, fairly good salaries that the taxpayers are throwing in. And I think the public has a right to see who's being appointed and weigh in to their representatives why or why not they should be appointed. So I appreciate Carol Mitten's comments. At the same time, I just want to represent that the public has an interest in this too, and I hope we can safeguard the public's input in this process. Thank you.
Further discussion, Mary Alice.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think from what I've heard from everybody tonight, I think we all recognize that there's a need to change this process, which requires us changing the code and also giving more certainty to people who work at the city of Urbana. I would like to call out, I know that this has been an uncertain time, and I would like to thank the families of all the employees who support them during this time, because I know it's also stressful on those families.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
No.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to reports of standing committees. And that would be Councilmember Jaya Colasetti.
Yeah, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, we have 2 items on the consent agenda. I would recommend for approval.
Could you please read them?
Okay, I'm figuring out the process still. Sure. The first is resolution number 2021-06-025R, a resolution approving a City of Urbana Community Development Block Grant Program Agreement for RPC Senior Repair Program. And the second is resolution number 2021-06-026R, a resolution to approve an amendment to a tornado siren intergovernmental agreement.
So then the next step would be to ask if anyone wants to pull either of those 2 items off the consent agenda in case they want to discuss.
Thank you. Would anyone like to pull one of those items off of the consent agenda?
Okay. Looks like we are ready to move on that item. So we had a motion by Jaya Colasetti. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by James. Will the city clerk's office please call the roll?
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Next, recommendation from the Committee of the Whole is an ordinance number 2021-06-023, an ordinance amending the fiscal year 21 budget with a recommendation for approval. Is there any discussion? Is that what I do?
I'll
And we need
second that.
We'll need a second. So it's moved by Jaya, seconded by Mary Alice. Okay, discussion. Elizabeth, did you want to comment on this?
Sure, if you would like. I did include a short memo in the packet explaining the changes that were made based on the council request at the last meeting. And that was reviewed by the council members who originated that request. And I think at this point, it's what you're looking for. So, but if you have questions about other changes, I'm happy to take them.
Any other questions?
Which item are we on?
We're on
So
2A.
I believe she called the budget amendment, right? There's
For
both the
fiscal year
budget.
21?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, the both are attached to the memo. So.
Are we doing them separately? I have a question about the 22 one. Or
Yeah, we're doing them separate. So this is the ordinance amending the fiscal year 21 budget. Actually, it's revising. Is that revising?
The title of the ordinance is revising. It's commonly referred to as a budget amendment.
Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Okay, Jaya. All right, next we have ordinance number 2021-06-024, an ordinance adopting fiscal year 22 budget, including the amendments that were listed at the committee of the whole and the one that was included in the memo for recommendation for approval. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, moved by Jaya, seconded by Sharice. Discussion.
So I had a quick question.
Sure.
I don't think there were any amendments. I know that there were changes, but I think the changes are actually reflected in the existing ordinance now as they were updated by Elizabeth. Is that correct?
Correct. The ordinance that you have in front of me, in front of you, that was in the packet includes the change that was discussed last week.
Okay, so do we need to amend the motion since there's technically no amendments to it?
I can restate it.
I just want to make sure we get the budget passed correctly.
Good point of clarification, maybe just to state it correctly. On behalf of the committee of the whole, I'm recommending ordinance number 2021-06-024, an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 22 budget for approval.
And I'll second again.
Grace.
Thank you. I see the change about admin, other professional services, and that's for the study, correct? And is there any more like specific language in there? You know, like other professional services seems like very vague. Is there more detailed description of it in the budget?
So as we discussed last week, the budget is really the numbers, but you will find in the cover memo, there's an explanation of what the intent is. And actually in the ordinance on the last whereas clause on the first page, it also indicates what the intent was there.
Thank you. And for the training, I was wondering if you could point me to the number amount in the budget and if there's a narrative part as well that I'm missing.
So you were looking, you might have to refresh my memory a little bit, because I know there was some discussion about training and specifically the 35,000 that was allocated for new training and police patrol. Is that what we're talking about?
It was specifically for de-escalation training, but yes, that 35.
Right. So that would be included in a line item on page 73 of the budget. But it's not called out separately because that's not a separate line item. It's part of the training budget there. And the training budget in that line item is $57,567.
Is there any more specific stuff on separating out that portion for this training? I guess I was confused how that one budget chunk gets flagged for the different uses.
So it's flagged in our financial system because it was designated for that. But again, technically the budget is, you're approving the numbers. But I think it's understood in the organization what the intent is with those funds.
Does that answer your question, Grace?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay. Any other council comment? Okay, we have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes.
On behalf of the committee of the whole, I'd like to recommend resolution number 2021-06-024R, a resolution adopting the capital improvement plan for approval.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Grace?
Yes.
Moved by Jay, seconded by Grace. Any discussion? We do have our Public Works Director, Tim Cohen, here, if you had questions for him as well. Grace.
Thank you. I do have questions about quite a few of these projects because they're really big items in the majority of the spending. And my understanding is that generally a lot of this is design work in the next year and then major construction in 23. And Tim, please correct or confirm anything that's wrong here. Just wanted to clarify on that, and that we will be getting some updates for council and the public to have some input on the designs. Is that correct? Sometime throughout the next year?
Yes, we'll continue to update the council as we move forward with these. We're going to be working, once the capital improvement plan is passed, we'll begin engaging consultants to assist with the design. And generally speaking, the day-to-day stuff will go between our city staff and the council, but we'll certainly plan to provide updates for the council as we progress through that.
Thank you. And I had another question too about the fire stations in particular. It looks like the plan is to just build on the adjacent properties. Wondering if that's correct, and what's the plan with the existing stations?
That's not confirmed yet. That's the MO behind it. So like the North Lincoln, we've acquired some land with the idea that we're probably going to need more land, but we're in the scoping meetings right now for those. So their locations are not firm, I'll say. For the most part, generally that's the idea at this point, but we just haven't even scoped the projects yet to determine if the final locations are going to be right there or not.
Thank you. And one more comment too is I do encourage you to open up for input as early as possible in the process, as that's, shown most effective in any plan and design process to have early input. And I think that there are some big picture things that, we could have conversations about as long as we're not too far in the process. Things like with fire, I don't know how feasible it is, but in some conversations on our tours, that they respond to a lot of medical emergencies and that we could be more, maybe efficient or utilizing that. And so I think that there are some, kind of big picture conversations that involve the physical building. So I would just encourage and hope that we can have input as early as possible.
Yeah. And we've got a scoping team right now that consists of myself, some of the facility supervisors, deputy director of operations, the fire chief, the deputy director, the deputy fire chief, the exec office. We've got a group together kind of working on defining the scope right now for what we want, because we have to issue a request for qualifications to get somebody engaged to do the design. And the initial part of the design is really going to be defining the scope even more. So kind of give us, here are some conceptual ideas. So scale wise. So is this a $2 million station, a $4 million, $6 million station? And what is the smorgasbord to add and delete? What is the bare minimum that is needed versus, what is the golden standard if we could afford it? So there will certainly be internally, we're working on the scope right now. So it's just not defined yet.
James.
Yeah, along the lines of what Grace is talking about, I was really excited to hear about the possibilities of beyond the fire station need, having resources at these locations in these parts of the community, that because they're in locations where additional office space or resources might be useful for the communities around them. And so I know that that means more, and that means more investment. That's not just a fire station, that's a public building beyond a fire station. But I think that's a really exciting possibility, particularly I know in Ward 7, the Silverwood neighborhood has needed a place for resources to come to them. And the North Lincoln location has that kind of possibility as well. I know we have schools in our community and Park District locations in our community that provide some of those kinds of options, but schools have some of the social services, but not for necessarily all of the community. They're focused on supporting the families of school children. I know some of them go beyond that, but I think there's a real opportunity here. So that's why having input early on, as Grace is asking about, is important, so we can see the full possibility of this investment.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes.
The next ordinance was passed from the committee of the whole with no recommendations. So ordinance number 2021-06-225, an ordinance authorizing sale of city-owned real estate. And there are four locations listed.
So we need the presentation then from Public Works, and then we'll get a motion on the floor.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. This is an ordinance that would prescribe the manner in which the city would sell 4 pieces of real estate for which it is owned for some number of years and made no use of, and for which the city sees no near-term use for. 2 of these parcels are currently essentially part of King Park. The Park District has been maintaining those properties and has a sidewalk on them. Another parcel was part of a long ago road improvement along Lincoln at Eads. And all the other parcels that were part of that project were dispossessed by the city years ago, but this one was missed. And that that property is effectively someone's front yard right now. The adjacent property owner has been maintaining that parcel. The last parcel, it was created when there was a road improvement on Eads, and the city has simply been mowing the lawn there for several years. In all instances, the ordinance proposes to sell each parcel for $1. With respect to the King Park parcels, we're simply proposing that the parcels are sold to the Park District. For the other two parcels, the ordinance is proposing to sell the parcels to the adjacent property owner with the longest shared property line. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Questions for Scott? Sharice?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank Scott. I called him to get information about this last week, and he was very helpful in explaining to me because all of these parcels are in my ward. So I had definite interest in how this was going to go about, but he was very patient with me in explaining how they're so small. You know, some of them it's just a matter of, oh, you know, they take your lawnmower, and I did not know that they were still city property, but there's nothing that's big enough there to put a piece of put any type of structure on it or anything like that. It's more almost like an easement of little skinny piece of grass, and with the exception of the two little lots on that King Park has been maintaining. So Scott, I just wanted to thank you for informing me about the process. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Scott? Chris?
Yeah, just so the taxpayers are clear, we're not selling buildings for $1. This is just blank land, right?
Correct.
Grace?
Thank you. And sorry if you just mentioned, I missed it, but these were donated to the city, is that correct?
The city acquired some of these as just right-of-way realignments. So the Eads property to the west, for instance, the others were probably purchased. Well, the King Park properties were probably purchased, as those are a little bit larger. That would have been so long ago. I don't know the details, and you know, I'm not sure how we acquired. There's some details that Dan Rothermel at Public Works did some really great work pulling up some of the history there, and it's in the memo. But some of these are just realignments, and some of them were purchases.
Thank you. And I had another one too. I was just wondering if we could have a sense of other city-owned properties that are not in use. You know, they've been leasing some for $1 that were in use with no buildings. And I guess just wondering what's kind of the status or the overview of city-owned properties and their use or vacancy.
Yeah, so we have a small team between Public Works and Community Development that is working on bringing some order to our real estate holdings. That involved a first effort to take these parcels on Wood Street in downtown, which I quickly identified as parcels we want to own long-term for future Boneyard Creek redevelopment, but that we weren't going to be doing anything with in the near term. So we took that parcel right away and we leased that to Solidarity Gardens for a community garden. Our second phase of this project was to identify the next most obvious parcels that we should simply dispossess ourselves of. And that's the ordinance that you have before you tonight. Our next phase for this team is to identify sort of a third round of parcels that may have some productive use or may have some, market value, and we should go through more of an auction type scenario to dispossess ourselves of them. So that third round will be, it's going to take more time and a more careful effort. So this is the second phase of those three there.
Any other questions?
I think Jaya made a motion. I'm happy to second the motion.
There was one with no recommendation. Would you like to restate the motion?
I can, yeah. So I can move to recommend ordinance number 2021-06-025, an ordinance authorizing sale of city-owned real estate for approval.
And I'll second that.
Okay. And just for clarification, these addresses are 902 Eads Street, 1108 Eads Street, 909 North Lincoln, and 911 North Lincoln. Is there further discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Colacetti,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes.
And also from the Committee of the Whole, resolution number 2021-06-027R, resolution adopting the supplemental state motor fuel tax resolution for Lincoln Avenue / Springfield Avenue resurfacing project was passed to council with no recommendation.
Tim Cowan.
Evening, everybody. So this one, we passed a resolution back in March to authorize state motor fuel tax funds to use for this project. At the time, we passed the authorization for 2.2 million, which was anticipated to cover both the construction and the construction engineering services related with this. We've recently received bids back for the construction only, which came in at 2.33 million. Essentially what we're asking for here, we've reviewed the bids. In general, a lot of the bid prices are slightly higher, but a couple of the key component bid prices, such as the hot mix asphalt, which is probably 25 to 30% of the whole project, is about 25 to 30% higher than bids that we saw in 2020. Also, things like traffic control were much higher than what we've seen in the past. Being as I don't expect for us to rebid this and have a substantial difference in any quick time frame, I don't think if we rebid this summer or possibly even this fall that we're going to get much difference in that. My recommendation was to authorize additional funds to adequately fund this project in its entirety as bid. We'll certainly work with the contractor to potentially try to work on some value engineering of the project to reduce some of those costs. But the initial step is, because it's state motor fuel tax funds, we have to pass a resolution to authorize up to, and typically I would recommend a little bit beyond that so that we don't have to go back to the state to adjust it if we have small change orders there. So that's why the recommendation that you guys have in front of you is for slightly more. I think the bid came in at 2.33 million. I recommended revising the budget to 2.450 million. The construction engineering proposal came in actually less than what we expected, so I've reduced that slightly, but the total that we would be asking for as part of this supplemental resolution would be $400,000 to take the original 2.2 million up to 2.6 million to cover both the construction and construction engineering and any potential contingencies that come up during construction.
Any questions for Tim? Grace.
Thank you. I'm understanding the situation. So the bids came back higher than expected, than was budgeted. And I'm confused here how the state motor fuel taxes versus state funding and stuff comes in. If you could explain that part.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's honestly something that a lot of people don't get. So as a municipality, we are allocated funds from the state motor fuel tax funds based on our population because we're a municipality. So we get a certain amount of funds sent to us, I think on a monthly basis, that they say, hey, here's this money, you have to use it on transportation projects. There's rules in place for what we can and can't spend this on, generally anything transportation related. So roadways, sidewalks, pavements, drainage for roadways, signage, traffic signals, even trees that may be safety issues for pedestrians, bicyclists, other traveling motorists. But generally speaking, so because these are state allocated funds, they have a checks and balances system at the state level that we have to pass a resolution internally to say, hey, we're going to spend this money on this. That goes to the state. Once they see that, they say, okay, we've checked your account. You have enough money to spend it on this. These are all approved things. You can go spend it now. Then we have to go through the actual project, do everything. And then at the end of the project, there's a formal closeout project. So if we budget 2.6 and at the end of the project, we've spent 2.45, we have to send paperwork back to the state to tell them what we actually did. It's kind of like a self audit. So it's our money, the state gives it to us, but it's kind of like they're keeping track of it. So we have to check in with them on all these different steps.
And so this is coming from that state money, and this is just needing kind of council approval to request more money from the state tax.
It's essentially our money. We just have to resolve to spend this amount on this project. And then that goes to the state. So they see it as, okay, they're taking another $400,000 out of their pot. We need to tie it to this project so that we know they have $400,000 less when they want to come up to do the next project. What happens in smaller communities, Urbana, we see a lot more, we have a lot more resources financially, but smaller communities, what has happened is people want to spend money and they try to do a project. And if they don't get this authorization first by the state and they try to do, say, a $250,000 project, they only got $200,000 in their account, that raises a red flag to the state to say, hey, you guys don't have that money. So if you're not spending it out of your local funds to take care of the rest of this, we need to talk.
Thank you. I did have one more question too, if it's okay. I was wondering the time frame of because they used to take bids from external contractors, correct? And the time frame or deadline or how those things kind of work, because I know they can be spread out and that's kind of always a thing. Just wondering how the city handles it.
So essentially we publish or we advertise for bids, I think a little over 3 weeks early on this, just because in the hopes that we do get some of the earmark funding we applied for, we wanted to try to follow federal guidelines, which federal guidelines is 21 days in advance of bid. So we advertised more than 21 days in advance of bid. We opened bids. We followed all the federal guidelines that we can at this time. So if that earmark funding does come through, essentially we've done all the necessary steps between that here and there. But essentially we did the design, we put it out to bid, independent contractors issued bids for this. We opened bids and the contractors will have to be compliant with all of our policies. Then we'll make assuming the resolution passes, we would then, the next step would be Public Works making a recommendation for award to the low bidder.
And how about for the construction timeframe?
Okay. So likely if we get a contract executed within the next month, then there's just, so if from notice to award to actual final contract execution time, usually you're about a month. So if we go to notice award, after this meeting, there's just time because they have to send us certificates of insurance and some other compliance forms for us to say, okay, check. You guys have done all of these next things for us to actually execute the contract with you now. Likely construction on this is probably best case scenario, mid-August at this point, starting. And then dependent on how aggressive they are because of the I-57 interchange that's happening this year, a lot of resources are getting sucked up for that. But that also means that some contractors, like some of the ones that bid on this, may be hungrier because of it. So they may there's a chance that all the construction could be done before Thanksgiving, but the contract is actually a completion date contract before June 1st. So if they get all the concrete work done before the weather turns bad, they would come back in the spring and do all the paving. They could get it all done feasibly before Thanksgiving, but because of we're not really sure of what resources are available right now because of COVID, there may be some advanced lag times on materials as well. So August, middle of August is probably the earliest start date in my mind, and June 1st is the latest completion date in my mind of next year. The idea was I wanted to make sure they had 30 days before the end of the fiscal year that we could actually close the project out. So
Thank you for the information.
Chandra.
This is just sort of like a curiosity question, but what's sort of like your process of making sure that you get bids from women and minority-owned construction?
I mean, we basically follow all the public notification guidelines. With state-funded projects, that has to be advertised on the IDOT the IDOT bulletin, which this type of work using state funds also requires pre-qualified contractors to be pre-qualified with IDOT to do the work. As far as, we basically stipulate everything in there. They need to be compliant with all of our internal policies that we have set on that stuff in requirement to that. So they still have to go through, and they either have to have an EEO compliance certificate already with the city, or they have to apply and get one to get the contract awarded to them.
Any other questions? Do you want to restate the motion, Jaya?
Sure. I'll make a recommendation for resolution number 2021-06-027R, a resolution adopting the supplemental state motor fuel tax resolution for Lincoln Avenue / Springfield Avenue resurfacing project for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Sharice. Further discussion? And yes, construction will probably start about the time students come back to campus, which is what happens every year, but it's a good thing. Okay, could the clerk's office please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Miss Colasetti,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you, Jaya. Reports of special committees. We don't have any tonight. Reports of officers. Any of the city officers have anything to report?
I think you just wanted one or either you or me to remind folks that the city building will be reopening on July 6th, and we'll be back in person for council meetings, committee meetings, board and commission meetings. And the police service desk will be manned regular hours between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m.
We'll be sending out a press release later in the week announcing that to the public with more, whatever details are needed. So you'll get a copy of that. I also wanted to remind folks that 10 o'clock Wednesday, June 30th, is the ribbon cutting for 200 South Vine, which is the building just north of the city building. This has been a long time coming. We're told that it's fully leased. So 10 o'clock Wednesday, there will be a ribbon cutting, and that will be followed by tours of a couple of the units so you can see what's inside. And when you think about it, I think this has been at least 10 years in the making if you think about when that land was first acquired by the city over a decade ago. So if you're available at that time, I'd encourage you to come to the ribbon cutting. Okay, the last item on the agenda are appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. This is the time of the year when some of our 130 or so seats on our boards and commissions come to an end or get restarted again. So I first wanted to, I think we'll take these in two chunks. First are appointments, and these are new members coming on to two commissions and one board. The first is an appointment to the Historic Preservation Commission, and this is for Laura O'Donnell for a term ending June 30th, 2024. Laura is a 25-year resident of Urbana and adjunct professor of art history at Eastern Illinois University. In her own words on the memo that you received, she's got a master's degree in art history from the University of Illinois. She completed several architectural history courses, and she remains interested in architectural history. She lives in a house that's at least 100 years old, and she's very familiar with upkeep needs of older structures. She has an interest in the preservation and protection of resources and would like to serve on the Urbana Historic Preservation Commission because she believes that buildings from the past enable the city to retain a connection to its historical identity and helps attract new residents, businesses, and visitors. That said, she said she doesn't believe that Urbana should hold on to a structure just because it's old, but she does believe it needs to judiciously protect those of significant aesthetic, structural, and historic value. Another new appointee to the Human Relations Commission is for a term ending June 30th, 2024. For Elizabeth Asako Kines Leggett. She's a 38-year resident of Urbana and is the Student Activities Coordinator at Eastern Gateway Community College. She states in her application, quote, "I'm dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. As an undergrad student at the University of Illinois, I served as an intern in the Community Relations Office at the City of Champaign, trained as a peer educator for the program on intergroup relations, and created a class on biracial, multiracial identity. I received the UIUC Outstanding Asian American Student Leader Award in 2001. As a graduate assistant for diversity and social justice education in the Office of Inclusion and Intercultural Relations at UIUC, I planned, implemented, oversaw, and evaluated the iConnect Diversity and Inclusion Workshop, which is a mandatory in-person diversity workshop for incoming students during its first year at UIUC. Also worked for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the University of California, Santa Cruz, where I coordinated programs like the Diversity and Inclusion Certificate Program. In addition, I'm passionate about mental health and have been involved with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, since 2015. I'm interested in joining the commission because I'm passionate about diversity and improving my community." And then the last new appointment is for the library, Urbana Free Library Board for a term ending June 30th, 2024. This is Sarah Bennett. Sarah is an archives librarian at the Champaign County Historical Archives. As part of her work, she plans programming and outreach events for the community about topics related to local history and genealogy. She's passionate about making the archives a vibrant and welcoming part of Champaign-Urbana. Sarah is delighted to be a part of the UPTV Commission and to aid in this vital community resource in any way. Sarah is the library, the Urbana Free Library employee representative to the library board. So I would entertain a motion for these appointments for Laura O'Donnell, Elizabeth Asako Kines Leggett, and Sarah Bennett.
I would so move.
Second.
Moved by James, seconded by Chandra. Are there any discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So there is a seat on the Urbana Free Library Board that's designated for employees.
Yeah, it was formerly, yes.
And Sarah is currently on the Urbana Public Television Commission?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll clarify that. I think that's a typo where it says the Urbana Free Library Board. She's being appointed to the UPTV Commission. She is the library representative on the UPTV Commission. So the library board previously appointed Sarah to the UPTV Commission at their June meeting, and you're all approving that appointment to where she'll be the representative on the UPTV Commission.
Well, that's our mistake. Okay, so she's the UPTV Commission. Okay.
Well, then I would like my motion, my so move to be corrected to say that it's Sarah Bennett for the Urbana Public Television Commission, correct?
Correct. Thank
And
you.
Chandra, you seconded. Are you okay with that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
My second remains.
Okay. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Colacetti,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. And then we have a number of reappointments. Before I wanted to get into those, I do want to take a minute to acknowledge 3 people who are stepping down from service on boards and commissions, and they represent many, many years of service to the community. The first is Tyler Fitch, who has served as chair of the Urbana Plan Commission since 2013, and he's been on the Plan Commission since 2007. So he's stepping down, and we have tremendous appreciation for his service on that commission. Kim Smith is stepping down from the Historic Preservation Commission, and she's served since 2009. And Scott Dossett is stepping down from CPRB. He's been on CPRB since its formation and just has brought a wealth of his institutional knowledge and a real steady presence and passion for service and the Civilian Police Review Board. So he'll be greatly missed. Okay, we have reappointments to a number of different commissions. The first is Ann Hines Silvas. Let's see, and the number of people these are all terms ending June 30th, 2024, except for the last one. So Ann Hines Silvas, 30-year resident of Urbana, served on the Community Development Commission for more than 20 years. She's Assistant Dean of Community and Economic Development at the U of I Extension. She's a member of the Community Development Society and serves on the Board of Directors for the Illinois Rural Development Council. Patricia Jones is also reappointed to the Community Development Commission. She's Associate Director for Research at the Beckman Institute. She worked for NASA as Manager of Human Systems Integration. She earned a BS in Psychology from the University of Illinois, the MS and PhD in Industrial and Systems Engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology. She's a resident of Luna and provides information regarding the City of Urbana programs and services on the listserv there. So those are for the Community Development Commission. For the Design Review Board, for terms ending June 30th, 2024, Matt Cho was born and raised in Urbana. Matt owns and operates several businesses downtown, including Sip Yard, Broadway Food Hall, Cafeteria and Company, and CoLab. He's served previously on other boards, including the CUMTD Board, Champaign County Economic Development Corporation, and the former Urbana Business Association. He has a master's in architecture and urban planning from the University of Illinois. For the J. Scott Kunkel as chair, he's been actively involved with the Building Safety Code Board of Appeals, the Design Review Board for many years, and has never missed a scheduled meeting. He's a licensed architect in Illinois, Indiana, Colorado, and Florida, and an NCARB certificate holder. And I have to say, I don't know what that stands for, and brings over 30 years of experience with development in Champaign-Urbana in a wide variety of building types. For the Historic Preservation Commission, David Hayes, professor. He's a professor and the Brenton H. and Jean B. Wadsworth Head of the Department of Landscape Architecture at the U of I. He's trained in architecture and history of art. His scholarly research and teaching include the history and theory of landscape design in early modern Europe, interfaces between architecture and landscape, and pedagogies of history and design. He's the co-editor of 45, which is a journal of outside research, and co-director of the Chicago-based gallery Space P11. For the Plan Commission, terms ending June 30th, 2024, Andrew Fell is the owner of Andrew Fell Architecture and Design. He has extensive knowledge of building codes and development regulations from his experience working on numerous projects for clients in the city of Urbana. And the other Plan Commission reappointment is Jonah Weisskopf. He's lived and worked in the West Urbana neighborhood for the past 20 years. He's a commercial broker who specializes in small-scale rental property. He has also created and manages multiple co-op houses in West Urbana. For the Property Maintenance Code Board of Appeals, David Crow. He's been the president of TCT Construction for more than 20 years. They operate two divisions, the TCT General Contractors and Rainbow International. TCT General Contractors has specialized in commercial building products, primarily banks, restaurants, convenience stores. Rainbow International of East Central Illinois specializes in large loss, smoke, fire, water mitigation, damage, and reconstruction. And finally, for the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term ending June 30th, 2026, Charles notes that he's a graduate of the University of Michigan, but he is a loyal Illini fan. Being on the zoning board has allowed him the opportunity to learn about, vote on issues that affect our community's growth and change while adhering to board policies and procedures. So I want to thank all the board members or all the volunteers who have served as board members and who continue to lend their expertise, their time, their energy, and their interest in our community to serve our community. And I would entertain a motion for the reappointments that were listed above.
I'd like to move to for the reappointments to the Planning Commission and Community Development Commission, Design Review Board, Historic Preservation Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Property Maintenance. Sorry, and Property Maintenance Code Board of Appeals reappointments for approval. And yeah.
Did you include historic preservation, Sharice?
Historic preservation. Yeah, I think I said, well, those were new appointments, correct?
There's one for reappointment.
Historic Preservation Commission. I'd like to move for those reappointments for approval.
I'll second.
Who was that?
Jaya.
Jaya, okay. Discussion. James.
Yeah, I have just a couple of questions. Is Matt Cho continuing on the Zoning Board of Appeals?
He is, this is for the Design Review Board. His
I
term's
don't know
not-
his exact term for ZBA, but he was not up for reappointment on ZBA, so I think he's in the middle of his term.
Okay, so he'll be on both boards then. I noticed that the Design Review Board has several designated seats.
Correct.
Does he fill one of those designated seats?
Yes, there's a requirement, or one of the seats is for a business owner, so he fills that seat.
Okay, great. And then I just noted it's included here that Scott Kunkel is also on the Building Safety Code Board of Appeals.
Correct.
So, and I noticed with the Design Review Board, that means we have people crossing over that don't have designated seats, like the Plan Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission. We have connection to the Zoning Board of Appeal and Building Safety by having these people serve in two roles. Is that correct?
There are people serving multiple roles, correct?
Okay. Well, some of them are defined, it looks like, by the enacting documents of those areas.
Correct.
Okay.
So for instance,
I'm just trying to understand.
there are some designated seats on the Building Safety Board. For instance, there's like architect, attorney, so there are designated seats on that. Also developer role. So I can't remember which Scott fills on that one, if it's the architect or the developer. Similarly, on the Design Review Board, there's designated seats, and Scott fills the architect. Sorry, we have a lot of changes. So he fills the architecture seat on that one.
Okay, So those connections are going to be parts of the things I think council, at least I know as a new council member, I'd like to understand, and when they're there for a reason, I'd like to understand them, and when they're just a person who likes to volunteer, that's what I'd like to know as well. So
just to give you a little preview, the Property Maintenance Board and the Building Safety Board, we will be bringing to you a merging of that board and a giant code change process. So we will be explaining a lot about those boards to you shortly, well, in a few months, when we bring that code amendment to you.
yeah, and I do want to make it clear that I'm asking this question not about those two individuals. They seem eminently qualified. I just wanted to understand the connection better.
And when you start to look at our boards and commissions, we have varying numbers on boards. We have very small boards. We have boards and commissions that are 11 members. I think that's probably one of our biggest. Some of them have designated seats. When the enacting ordinances were passed, they specify we want people from this, and this areas of expertise, and others are open. We have vacancies. We're gonna, once we get all these, now that we've gotten the appointments and reappointments done, we'll put together a list of all the vacancies that are available on all the boards and commissions, and share that with you so you can help us recruit good members. And we also just recently learned there now will be 2 vacancies on the, in addition to everything within the city, I also make appointments to the Housing Authority Board of Directors or board, and there are now going to be 2 vacancies on that board that City of Urbana appoints. So I'll be looking for commissioners for the Housing Authority Board as well. But we do have other vacancies to fill as well. The one board that gets multiple applications, way more than can be accommodated, is always the Urbana Free Library Board. So last time there was an opening, I think we got 12 applications, and we were able to successfully recruit a number of members for other boards and commissions out of the pool of candidates for the library board. So that was productive day. Anyway, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further questions? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the council, I want to wish you all a happy new year, happy new fiscal year, and happy 4th of July, and we'll see you next week. This meeting is adjourned.